Serve it up with a cuppa or a cocktail, all available to your taste. Make your reservation today on 0701 560 560.
At the first sign of pain, you need a solution that you can trust to provide effective relief and is gentle on the stomach. Try Panadol Advance for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Advance. This has been Medifax for Panadol.
Along came love.
Busco los rastros de huellas debajo de ramas.
I need to know what's going on between you and Graciela.
I didn't say anything about the time you were with Miguel.
Yes, but let me remind you once again that it was because you asked me, so don't you dare throw that on me.
I'm sure that this is the beginning of something really good for the both of us.
The truth is, I could never get you out of my heart, David.
And I am also sure of that.
Is it too late now to say sorry?
No.
Along came love.
Beat sensitivity pain fast with Sensodyne Rapid Action for clinically proven relief in 60 seconds.
This is NTV.
Greetings and salutations, East Africa, and thank you for joining us on Your World. I hope you had a restful weekend and are ready to end the month of January with some oomph. And speaking of which, January marks the Thyroid Disease Awareness Month. A condition, if not arrested early, can cause devastating effects on the patients. Good news is there is life beyond a diagnosis, and this morning we shall be speaking to people with lived experience and also get guidance from a specialist. My name is Gladys Gachanja, and this is what else you can expect. As I mentioned, today we shed light on the thyroid gland and the impact it has on your body. Egypt begins COVID-19 immunization, becoming one of the first countries in Africa to vaccinate its citizens. Libyans spray over bodies found in a mass grave in Tahuna, a once militia-controlled town.
This is the most effective way we can do both those things.
Cathedral injects new hope into thousands of elderly people as Britain mounts its biggest ever vaccination drive. Well, thank you for joining us on the broadcast. And our question of the day to you, even as we understand thyroid disease this morning, is: do you know someone, or are you a thyroid disease survivor? What is the greatest challenge in accessing treatment? Talk to us. That hashtag is New Normal on our social media handles. And of course, you can reach us using that number at the bottom of your screen. But before we get to that very important conversation, let's take a look at the numbers in as far as the impact of COVID-19 around the world and globally this morning. That number stands at 99,771,343 confirmed cases around the globe. Out of that number, 71,746,327 people have totally recovered from the same, and 2,138,965 have succumbed to COVID-19. In Kenya, that number stands at 99,983 confirmed cases. 82,969 have recovered from the same, and unfortunately we have lost 1,744 Kenyans to COVID-19. Well, do remember the pandemic is still with us. There is a temptation to actually relax on the measures that have been put in place to deter infection of the same. But remember, wearing your mask, social distancing, and washing your hands with soap and water regularly are so important in ensuring that we keep those numbers low. I take a look at some of the stories making headlines this Monday, and Egypt begins its COVID-19 immunization program, becoming one of the first countries in Africa to vaccinate its citizens, with a doctor and a nurse receiving the Chinese-made Sinopharm jab. Egypt, the Arab world's most populous country with over 100 million people, received its first batch of a vaccine in December. The inoculation will be available to all health workers for free, according to the health minister, and she also paid tribute to over 330,000 doctors in Egypt who have died from the virus. Dozens of other medics were also vaccinated.
الأمر الآخر بالتأكيد بتحديد الموعد
Now, residents of Lubumbashi, the economic capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo, report that they are struggling with a rise in crime since a curfew was decreed last month to stem the spread of the novel coronavirus, with women bearing the brunt of the violence. Daniel Mwenze, a resident, says they came the day before yesterday. They operated there 4 or 5 houses and took phones and other property. We called the police, but the police took so long. As I said, they got lost. An anonymous female rape victim reported that they asked me to give the child to my husband. I gave the child to my husband thinking that they were now going to leave. Suddenly, they told me to take off my clothes. One of the policemen gave his weapon to the other and he raped me. Where forensics teams in war-shattered Libya have discovered 10 more bodies in mass graves in a once militia-controlled town outside the capital, Tripoli. Libyans prayed over the bodies found in mass graves in Tahuna as they mourned on Martyr Square in the capital, Tripoli. Miriam Haruda, sister of a reported victim, said, "We asked the government of National Accord, Human Rights, the International Criminal Court to quickly arrest these criminals." Abdul Naama, Tahuna Youth League president, adds, "We ask from the state and the world to support us in our situation because these criminals committing these crimes are arriving and roaming the eastern region." Well, this morning we talk about something that most of you last had in their biology class. Remember when we were being taught about the thyroid gland? Perhaps you don't remember where it is, but today we're going to remind you where it is and also the impact it has on your body, especially if it's not working at optimum. And to help us understand exactly what this is all about in studio, we have Dr. Eva Jenga. She is a consultant physician and also an endocrinologist. We're also joined in the other studio by Sarah Katule, who is the founder of the Thyroid Disease Awareness Kenya and herself a thyroid disease survivor. Naomi Kanonga, she is also a thyroid disease survivor. And in our other newsroom studio, we are joined by Ms. Swalem Lalanze, who is a caregiver with a child who is living with this condition. Thank you, ladies, for joining us on this conversation. And I think, Dr. as I mentioned, most people do not remember this biology class. So you can remind us what exactly the thyroid gland is and what the function of the same is.
Good morning. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me yet again. The thyroid gland is really an important gland in your body, one of the endocrine glands that help us function normally. It's a butterfly organ that's right just above the collarbone. It has two lobes on either side of the neck, and there's a small like cord, we call it the isthmus that joins the two lobes.
Perhaps we can have the picture so that we understand better what she's trying to describe to us.
So maybe we, somebody can, there you go. You can see how it looks like. Honestly, you looking at you and looking at me, you wouldn't even know and you wouldn't feel. It's not something that as you walk around people see. But when it becomes dysfunctional and starts becoming big, somebody will notice, or you will feel something like a lump on your neck. And sometimes as you're eating and you swallow, it tends to go up and down. So somebody might see some movement. So that is what your thyroid gland is.
Okay. And it's under the Adam's apple?
Yes, under the skin and just above the collarbone. In fact, when it is swollen, this small notch that everyone can feel, and you can put your finger under this notch.
On the collarbone?
Yes. That you wouldn't feel if the thyroid gland is enlarged. That's one of the things that becomes kind of smoothened out. So just above that collarbone, and you can see right up here, and when you look at that, it's exactly where that little butterfly, like very important gland that sits.
And speaking of its importance, what's the function of the thyroid gland?
This gland produces hormones that we call the thyroid hormones. We call them thyroid hormones because there are two main hormones. We have what we call the T3 and T4. Those two hormones are very, very crucial in the metabolism of all the functions in your body. And they're important in the performance and the function of every cell. So it influences every function from your head to toe, inside and outside, including starting from the skin, your hair, your nails, and now all the other metabolic system. Think, you mention any function in your body, I'll tell you how the thyroid hormone impacts. So, and it has to be produced in a balanced way for you to function normally. So when you produce too much, it is a disease, and we call it hyperthyroidism. You excess. When you produce little or none, it is hypothyroidism, and that also is a problem. So both extremes are not normal and will cause disease. So your body has to produce a normal and what is required as a balanced hormone. And this is regulated by another very, very important gland in your skull called the pituitary gland, which tends to regulate and coordinate the function of all our other endocrine glands.
And what causes the disease then? What causes it to be hyper or hypo?
There are several causes. There are several possibilities, and some of them are known. But one, if we were to take the overworking gland, one, it could be because you have something we call an autoimmune. You're forming antibodies in your system that are fighting your very own gland. Antibodies sometimes that don't realize and don't recognize the thyroid gland as part of your own and comes and starts fighting it, and it overstimulates it. And that can cause something called Graves' disease. is one of the most severe form of a hyperfunctioning gland. So it drives your thyroid to produce too much. And then you may have even a viral infection. The virus can cause inflammation that will be transient. It causes that gland to be inflamed and overproduce, overwork. But when the infection goes, your thyroid comes back to normal. And then, of course, we have the other working one. It also could be other antibodies, a disease we call Hashimoto's, whereby the antibodies fight the gland until it is no longer functional. Then, of course, there are other diseases whereby lack of iodine. Iodine is one of the nutrients or the micronutrients that are required in your body for that thyroid to function. You may have a good thyroid, no disease, but if you don't have that initial component for it to produce the hormone, and that's iodine, you will not be able to make the thyroid hormone. Okay. And this iodine deficiency in Kenya is present in some endemic areas. So we have areas in Kenya where we say we have endemic goiters. In the process of the thyroid trying to make thyroid hormone from very little iodine and iodide, it actually grows. It becomes bigger, trying to get enough cells to make that thyroid hormone. So the thyroid starts getting big. And we have specific areas, the Mountain Kenya region and in Kericho, T-zones. We have some of those areas. If you go to Kericho, you'll find a number of women with goiters.
Okay.
That's a study I remember doing when I was in my medical years.
Yeah.
And we were amazed. We walked around and we did, even in schools, we did a study and we did find iodine deficiency. I can't tell you why in those T-zone areas we have iodine deficiency. There are still studies that needs to be done for us to fight that. Then you're hearing me talking about women. This is because this disorder is very common in women, and as you can see, your audience today.
Yes, our panel has women.
Our panel is just women.
Yes,
it's the 9 out of 10 cases of thyroid disorder occurs in women.
And we'll understand why even as we go on with this conversation.
About this.
Let's hear from Sarah Katule. You founded Thyroid Disease Awareness Kenya because of a lived experience. What is it?
So I was diagnosed with thyroid disease in 2011. I had just given birth to my now 9-year-old little girl, but I didn't know that I was suffering from thyroid disease. Mine was autoimmune Graves' disease, and when I started experiencing the symptoms, I didn't understand what was going on. So I remember going into the doctor's office so many times. I remember one time I went in, I was taking my baby to the clinic, and I actually almost had an accident. My legs were not able to move, and I was pulled into a matatu right under the tires of a matatu because my legs just felt so sluggish. So after visiting the doctor several times, by that time my neck had kind of started swelling, and so that is when they diagnosed my thyroid disease. And from there, it's been a very challenging journey, of course, trying to find treatment in this country where the thyroid disease concept is still very foreign. So many people don't know about thyroid disease. And so, yeah, that's part of the reason why I founded this organization, but also having lost a very close childhood friend of mine to the disease, just right after she had given birth to her child, that really took, it made me feel really sad. And so I decided to help other people to find a platform where they can come share their experiences and learn about this condition.
Okay, and Sarah, was this the first time you were hearing of thyroid disease in your family?
Yeah, it was the first time. I'd never heard anybody else suffering from thyroid disease in my family. And so I think that is part of the reason why it was hard to detect, because I remember when finally when I did go for surgery, I talked to my mom, and she told me that there is somebody in her side of the family that was suffering from hypothyroidism. So that's when I came to realize that sometimes thyroid disease can also have a genetic predisposition to it.
Yeah.
Let's
hear from Naomi. Naomi, what is your story?
Well, the one that impacted my life so hard was when I lost 2 pregnancies to the disease. And it wasn't easy because when I was losing the first one, I wasn't aware that there's that possibility of a miscarriage. And it's a miscarriage, well, already it's well progressed into pregnancy, because at that point I was around 6 months pregnant. And so I went into early labor, and I gave birth to a baby that didn't survive. It was a baby boy. And it was devastating, because that's when I came to learn afterwards that I could miscarry with a disease. So I decided now to put more effort in research, because I was already aware for over quite a number of years. I was already aware that I'm suffering the disease, and the information that I had is that I could not conceive. And true to that, I couldn't conceive until I saw a doctor, and that doctor tried to bring the hormones to a normal level so that it's possible to conceive. But he did not enlighten me on the miscarriage part, that it's possible to miscarry. So I carried my pregnancy with pride until I went into early labor. And after losing the babies, when I realized I need to know more. And that's when I'm in hospital, that's when I'm being told the thyroid caused this. So later on, I started researching, and later on I conceived. I didn't stay for long without conceiving. I conceived again during the same year, but now I was more careful. So at some point in time, I was already told that we would have to put in a McDonald's stitch, and I have to be on a certain medication, which was not what I was taking before conceiving. But by the time I was even thinking of going for the McDonald's stitch, I lost the second one. At 4 months, I just went into early labor again, gave birth to a baby that didn't survive, another baby boy. So now after that, I decided to take a break and not try to conceive again, because now at least I know I could conceive. I knew I could conceive. But now the current issue at that time was to maintain the pregnancy to term. So after around another 8-9 months, I conceived again. Then now we had to do something. So that's when I was referred to a new doctor, a specialist who could assist me with the thyroid issue. So we had to go and do diverse tests. There were so many and quite costly, but we managed to do the tests, and we managed to put in the McDonald's stitch earlier on in the pregnancy, and this pregnancy survived, and it was successful.
Yay!
Yes.
We celebrate you. Wow, that was quite a journey, and I'm sure there are many who have walked in your shoes. Let's hear Miss Swale Mlalanze's experience. You are a caregiver to a daughter with thyroid cancer. When did this journey start?
Okay, for Haimana, it started 2017. By the time she was 7 years is when we realized that Haimana had a lymph node on her neck.
Okay.
So we took her to the doctor, then the doctor did something called FNA, but it was nil. There was nothing in that lymph node. So by the time we went home, she got worse, because she had chills at night. Sometimes she used to lack appetite, reduce weight, but we couldn't tell what was happening with her. So by the time we finished 1 year down the line, we took her again to the hospital. Then they told us to do a CT chest. which we detected that lungs were badly damaged. So they said it was TB, but it was not TB by that time. After I went to another hospital, now it was Kenyatta, 6 months down the line. They did their test, they did biopsy, then they told me it's thyroid cancer, which had spread to the lungs. So we started medication 2017 end of year till now. It's a long journey.
Wow, yes, it definitely is. And as you were saying, there was a series of misdiagnoses. Do you remember the symptoms she had?
Yeah.
Kama zipi?
Okay, Aimana alikuwa anakonda tu, hanoni, alafu chakula ilikuwa kwake hapendi kula, na sometimes pia nilikuwa na notice usiku na sweat sana, anakohoa, alafu most of the time she used to clear her throat. Mara mingi ungemsikia tu ni kama na clear throat. So by the time tulikuwa tunampeleka hospitali alikuwa anatibiwa cough. Most of the time ilikuwa cough, anapewa syrup za cough na antibiotics.
Okay, na alipata diagnosis akiwa umri upi?
Akiwa 7 years.
7 years. Okay. And Daktari, just listening to everyone, but before you even answer the question I'm about to pose, Naomi, do you have a history of thyroid disease in your family?
Just recently came to know that one of my uncles had it, but that is something recent, so we have not even sat down and talked about it and how it impacted his life. So I'm not really sure of anyone else, but that's on my father's side.
Okay. Miss Wale, nawe ushaisikia yoyote kwenye familia akona ugonjwa kama huu?
Both side, me and my husband, hakuna mtu yote akona ugonjwa wa thyroid. This is the first, both sides.
Okay. All right. So, Daktari, you talked about the reasons why you could, the causes to either hyper or hypothyroidism. The question is it instigated by environmental factors or genetic factors? What have you heard is more common?
From now the 3 cases, you can see 2 of them, they have family history. And it is known that thyroid can actually and most often runs in families. And most of the autoimmune diseases tend to run in families. So we do think it's a familial, there's familial predisposition. But you can also get thyroid disorders that are not, that don't have a family lineage or a family history. Especially the thyroid cancers, it doesn't, is not kind of familial as you have seen also in this child, Miss Wale's child. But I think it's important to know that you can have thyroid disorder and not know about it. It can be undiagnosed for years, and sometimes by the time it's being diagnosed, you already now have you're getting the symptoms which are extreme. And this is why, and I'm sure Sarah will most likely tell you, early screening, especially when you have family history, early screening is really important. This is also why we try and enforce or impact on health workers and health providers for children to be screened. In most parts of the world, children are screened at the nursery for thyroid disorders. We are not doing that here, but I think it's important. There's a simple screening test, just doing a thyroid stimulating hormone screening to be able to know whether you actually have what we call subclinical, meaning you have a thyroid disorder that is not clinically seen. So this is important because you can have thyroid disorders for many years, especially when the symptoms are mild. And of course, when you don't have access to the testing. So it's important.
All right. And now that we're talking about the symptoms, there are symptoms for the hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism.
Yes.
Perhaps you can list them for us so that we know exactly what we could be looking out for.
Okay. I remember when we started, I said this is a hormone that impacts on cell or every cell function. So when it's the hormone production is delayed, either hyper and hypo, then that cellular function will be affected. I'll start with the simplest ones. And it starts, in fact, what I can do is start from the top to go into the bottom.
Yes.
What most people will present with is the fatigue, just general fatigue. And this can happen when you are hypo. Let me start with hypothyroidism. That is under functioning thyroid. You get very tired. You don't want to do anything. Remember, the hormone is in charge of your basal metabolic rate. It's in charge of producing energy in your body. So when it's not, that thyroid gland is not working optimally, you don't have enough thyroxine hormone to help you get your metabolism in check, and so that you'll be able to get enough energy. So you get very tired. You also feel just sleepy, excessively sleepy. You might wake up having slept 12 hours and you just want to continue sleeping, because your body is really fatigued at every level. Then you find that because you are not producing, you are not you are not able to exercise, you're not burning the calories, you gain weight. And somebody will tell you, and this is one point when I believe a patient with hypothyroidism telling me, I rarely eat and I'm gaining weight. You know, before you tell people, when they say, oh, I really don't know where this weight is coming from, and then you tell people you can't get overweight from an burger. So, but for thyroid patients, when they tell you they are overweight, you believe them, because even the little amount they eat, they just stall it. So they gain weight. Then aches and pains everywhere because of deranged bone metabolism, muscle fatigue, bone pains. All these are part and parcel. These are symptoms that are really general. Then it starts now affecting, you start losing your hair, your skin is extremely dry, then you have nails that are cutting. For women, deranged menses, they can have either excessive bleeding during their periods, or they actually can lose their periods. Because it also affects the reproductive system, it affects your fertility issues. And you've heard from Naomi about the journey she has come through with the excessive. But even hypothyroidism will affect your fertility. In fact, people who are hypothyroid are unlikely to conceive. And when they conceive, then they will have problems as well. Then for the digestion, because of that, against load function, you get constipation. So this is a myriad of symptoms going with every function. You mentioned every function, it is affected. That's hypo. Then when you have excess, then everything is in upper gear. You are doing everything very fast. So you are like, you have loose motions, you will lose weight, you're always sweaty, you can't sleep because you are full of energy. Then you find your heart is beating too fast because everything is overworking. And then of course you become very easily agitated. You become, you actually can become psychotic, because everything is, even the brain is confused because of too much hormone. The weight loss can be excessive, and that's then lack of sleep. And of course, then lack of sleep becomes a vicious cycle. You're not sleeping, then you become, of course, highly wired and anxious and everything. When on the other side, for the hypothyroidism, in fact, you become depressed because you can't even tell what's going on in your system. So then when it comes to women with hyperthyroidism, again, you may conceive, but the chances of losing that pregnancy are very high. So miscarriages in severe hyperthyroidism. Hyperthyroidism also can present in your eyes, especially the Graves' disease. You see women with extreme prominence of eyes. We call it proptosis or exophthalmos. That's in Graves' disease. And I'm sure Sarah would be able to tell you that very clearly, because...
Are we referencing to the picture we're seeing on screen?
Yes, yes, the bulging eyes.
The bulging eyes.
Yes, that's from hyperthyroidism. So those are basically very simple symptoms. But remember, very many cases are symptomless. And that's the one we call subclinical hypothyroidism. And I think this is why we need to find ways. And I'm so happy with what Sarah is doing, making people aware, so that when you go for your wellness check, ask your doctor to check for your thyroid, especially if you're a woman.
Okay. Yeah. So Sarah, speaking of which, you had clearly a hyperthyroid, right?
Yes.
And what are these? Okay, you said you found out after you had your child. Did you have symptoms before that now in retrospect you're like, they started a while back?
Yeah, I remember there are times like I would wake up going to work and I just didn't want to go to work. And I would just feel lazy and tired. I didn't want to think. But also, you know, with thyroid disease symptoms, just as Dr. said, when I was pregnant, sometimes these symptoms are mistaken to be like, you know, pregnancy symptoms. So it becomes very, very tricky to diagnose thyroid disease, especially when your hormones are all over the place. And for us women, when you get pregnant, your hormones are going one direction, and then when you're almost giving birth, your body has to prepare to, you know, to bring the baby forth. And then once you give birth, your hormones are trying to help your body go back to normal. So this fluctuation, sometimes there are people whose thyroid glands cannot be able to handle it. So for me, I remember I was really sweaty, like Dr. has said. I had heart palpitations, but for me, I thought maybe it's because I'm tired and because I'm fatigued. And I'm glad Dr. Eva mentioned that, because sometimes we tend to sweep fatigue under the carpet. And I always tell people fatigue is not normal. If you are finding yourself, you're resting like with your 8 hours of sleep, and you're eating food the way you should, drinking water the way you're supposed to drink water, when you wake up in the morning and you're still feeling tired, there's something wrong. And mostly it's because your thyroid hormones affect a lot of your metabolism, as Dr. said, and energy. So when you're feeling tired and fatigued all the time, it's time to get checked. And the problem is that in Kenya, that is not something that is done. So for the patients have to be empowered to ask for these tests by them for themselves when used. And that's why we empower people. We give them the information. They're able to see the symptoms, and then they'll know, oh yeah, there's something wrong. I need to go and see a specialist. Another thing that I just wanted to mention, Dr. has said, there are thyroid specialists. And for me, the journey was part of the reason why it was so challenging, was because I was being seen by everybody and anyone telling me to go do this, everybody giving me their own advices, and that was confusing. And so I had to take it upon myself to go to the internet and research and Google, and that's when I realized that there are actually thyroid specialists called endocrinologists, and they know what they're looking for. For instance, when you go and you want to do a thyroid test, most general doctors will do the 3 tests, like Dr. has mentioned. One is the TSH, the T3, and the T4. But for an endocrinologist, there are other further tests that they will do to see what is going on in your system, whether your condition is triggered by an autoimmune condition like Graves' disease or something like that. A thyroid specialist would be able to know that. And we have had cases of people in our group who come and they've been seen by everybody, ENTs and general practitioners. And I always say, if you do a TFT, or what they call thyroid function test, and you realize that you have an abnormality, the first thing that you need to do is just now go and see a thyroid specialist. Yeah. They will be able to tell you more and do further tests.
Okay, and speaking of which, Naomi, you said you knew you had an issue with your thyroid, but your specialist rather never told you that you were prone to miscarriages. So when this was happening, what were you being told could be the cause?
I don't think I got your question right, but you're asking,
I'm asking
during pregnancy,
during the pregnancy, when you kept getting the miscarriages, what were you being told is the reason as to why they were happening?
The first time I lost the doctor that, where I was admitted, the doctor that saw me is the one who told me that the thyroid could have caused this. It's maybe an 80% chance that it's the thyroid. The other percentage could be an incompetent cervix. But since I'm already suffering from a disease that could cause a miscarriage, and at that time I was not on the right medication, one, and then I didn't know much about thyroid in pregnancy. So high chances were that I lost it to thyroid. Then she told me the symptoms to check out when I'm expecting. So the second pregnancy, I had already known that the disease could cause miscarriage. So now I was already careful about it. So I was looking now for the right doctors. But now I was not on any medication because the doctor I saw after losing the first one misadvised me because they told me I shouldn't be on any medication. And so I went into early labor earlier than even the first pregnancy. And that is one of the signs that my hormones were already haywire. Oh. So, and when I did a test after that, true to that, the hormones were not okay. They were haywire. So now we had to look for a solution because my solution at that point after losing the second one was to go for surgery to get it removed. But it's usually not, it's not the solution that you'd really look for because even after the surgery, you probably would be still on medication depending on the type of surgery you go through. So still, I would still be careful about conceiving. But then when I conceived, I wasn't ready for it. It just happened. And now we had to quicken things up, you know, like now get the right doctor at the right time. Because if I lost at 4 months, the second one, we can't get to 4 months before something is done with now the last one. So we did everything earlier on. Even the stitch was put on earlier on. Okay. So that's how we managed to get a successful pregnancy. Okay. But then now after that, the losing of breast milk, you can't breastfeed your own child. Now you have to look at other ways of feeding your baby because milk disappears. Like mine disappeared in 1.5 months. And even within that time, the 1.5 months period, I have never produced a liter for that baby.
Wait, so all this is tied to your thyroid gland?
Yes.
Wow.
So I dried up completely.
Okay, now I'm seeing Daktari shaking her head because she cannot believe what women have to go through. But then again, Miss Wale, wewe wakati ulijua mtoto ako na shida, ulienda daktari kwa daktari mwingine, unaambiwa hivi, unaambiwa vile. Walijuaje alikuwa na thyroid? Walifanya nini?
Walifanya kitu inaitwa biopsy. Alafu hiyo biopsy ndio ilikuja ikasema ako na thyroid problem. Lakini sasa ilikuwa imeshe past. Ikakuwa cancer which is papillary. Walikuwa wananiambia papillary is a friendly one.
Okay.
It can be curable, it is treatable. So Aimana bado anakunywa dawa za thyroid, hizo thyroxine. Na bado anaendelea na medication ya cancer.
Okay. Na sasa wakati alikuwa anapoteza weight, ako weak, hachezi kama watoto wengine, ulikuwa unaambia na hao daktari wengine shida ilikuwa?
Okay, mara ya kwanza walikuwa wananiambia watoto wengine ugrow tofauti. So vile alikuwa ameanza shule mara ya kwanza ndio tuli notice apendi kukimbia, anachoka haraka, akipanda stairs anachoka. Walikuwa wananiambia nimwache kwa sababu ni msichana, huwa wasichana wana grow hivyo pole pole. Wengine walikuwa wananiambia hivyo.
Na wengine wengi usema wasichana actually ndio ugrow haraka kuliko vijana.
Okay, niliambiwa wasichana huwa wapole. Niko na mtoto kijana na msichana, lakini vile wote nimewalea ni tofauti.
Okay, na ulijua kuna tofauti wakati ulipata kijana? Kwa nini?
Wakati huo.
Kwa nini?
Kwa sababu kijana ule aligrow very fast. Akawa anaanza hata kufikia haimana. So hapo ndio nili notice kwamba haimana agrow, hata unaona umri wake kimwili anakuwa mdogo, nywele pia zikasimama, zigrow hivyo. Hapo sasa ndio nilianza kutafuta madaktari pole pole, haraka sasa.
Okay. So now, Doctor, clearly the level of misdiagnosis is high. First, because people don't know which specialist to go to, but also not all specialists or doctors know what to look for. So what are these paramount test to do for you to know that this is thyroid and not any other condition?
Let me start by saying, I said it before, that you can have the thyroid disease and not know.
Yeah.
And it is important that when one suspects to have this, the condition, if you you see for the baby, they had a nodule, and he said very clearly they did a fine needle aspirate, which is called the biopsy, to find out what type. I think there we have a process. When you suspect a thyroid disorder, there are steps that you should do so that you don't miss out. And Sarah said it's not just doing the thyroid hormone that is important. It starts with first taking the good history, and you will find that sometimes you may get that family history that now guides you, so that you escalate your investigation as you go on. Then they examining the neck. A number of people, you will get that thyroid enlargement with because you know how the doctor or doctors, whether you're a endocrinologist or not, we are all taught how to examine the neck. That's examining by looking, by feeling, and actually by also auscultating. Because a hypothyroid, a girl that is palpating a lot, you will listen and you hear something even with your stethoscope. So history, examination, then gets you to the next step. Once now you clearly suspect a thyroid disorder, you do that, you check the blood, take blood test, you do the blood hormones, and you also now check for the thyroid antibodies to see whether this is an autoimmune, which will tell you that it most likely runs in families, and also will give you an indication of the line of treatment. And then there is an ultrasound, simple ultrasound, will show you the size and the structure of that thyroid gland, and you will be able to pick even those nodules. And when you find a nodule, then there is even now that next step of doing the fine needle aspirate to know this nodule, is it just a simple goiter, what we call a simple choroid goiter, and that you stop worrying so much about it, or is it showing abnormal cells, even as early as being a very tiny nodule, even 3 millimeters or 4 millimeters. It will give you now indication. The reason why I'm saying this is very important, a thyroid cancer picked early is completely curable by just removing the whole thyroid gland. Totally curable, and after that, no worries.
Okay.
Totally. It's one of the curable cancers known worldwide. So this is why detecting it early, diagnosing it properly is critical. So those are the very steps. And then, of course, as Sarah said again, we need to see endocrinologists. Unfortunately, we don't have enough endocrinologists in this country. And most of the endocrinologists that we have are stationed in the city. When you know that the health is devolved, we have county health systems. Most of them don't have endocrinologists. So the important thing is that any doctor can actually go through those steps. And when now you pick this, you can refer. If you're at the level 3 hospital, you can escalate that referral system, even go up to the level 6. And that's where you'll find, most likely you'll be able to find the specialist. For children, we now have pediatric endocrinologists in this country. And whoever you are, wherever the patient is picked, whether it is in a county, we can always refer them to the levels that have the pediatric endocrinologist. And once you get in touch, you get these patients in contact with the correct specialist, I can tell you the thyroid is one of the easiest endocrine the disorder to manage.
Yeah. And speaking of which, Dr. says if the thyroid cancer is caught early, remove the thyroid and the child will live a full life. Miss Wale, mtoto alitolewa thyroid, eh?
Yes.
Na akoaje leo?
Oh, okay. Aimana alitolewa thyroid, alafu akawa amepata kitu inaitwa stridor baadaye.
Okay.
So kulingana na vile alifanyiwa hiyo surgery, alifanyiwa baada amepatiwa dawa ambayo inaitwa radio iodine, which it was not the right procedure. Angefaa kwanza kutolewa thyroid, alafu ndio apatie radio iodine. Au alifanya vice versa.
Okay, na sasa leo mtoto akwaje?
Ako stable, na naweza sema She's very strong na Mungu pia anaendelea kumponya. Ako na nguvu.
Okay, na unasema alipitia thyroidectomy. Inamaanisha nini? Alitolewa, si ndio? Lakini pia ana kifaa ambacho ako nacho kwenye shingo. Kipi hiki?
Hicho kifaa kinaitwa trichostomy. Trichostomy ni pipe ambayo huwekwa kwenye koo, inamsaidia kupumua.
Okay, na sasa leo anaweza cheza na watoto wenzake, aende shule.
Shule bado, kwa vile lungs zake zilikuanga already damaged na ile cancer. Vile ilikuwa thyroid cancer, ilipita ikaenda mpaka kwenye lungs, ikawa imemfanya hawezi kupumua. So shule bado, shule sijampeleka kwa sababu ya hii mambo ya corona.
Okay, now Daktari, there's a question here. How does it move from just a thyroid disease and graduate to a cancer?
That's not the normal progression.
Okay.
So like this young girl didn't start maybe with the hyper or hypo. She most likely just started with a thyroid nodule that was cancerous. And what I'm listening to the mom, it was picked up too late. Because it had, by the time they were making the diagnosis, it had already metastasized to the lungs, which is one of the commonest areas the thyroid cancer metastasizes to. And the stride that she's talking about, that is the complication of surgery, not complication of the thyroid disease. And I think this, it's quite unfortunate, because as I said, picked early, it's curable. And so you may have then one of the progression, and this is why following up thyroid goiters, you don't know which thyroid nodule will become cancerous. And it's usually neither, it could actually be a euthyroid goiter, a goiter whereby the function is fine, but you have a nodule. And with time, it can turn cancerous. No one knows why one will progress to cancer and the one doesn't. And this is why when you have a thyroid swelling or a goiter, we usually advise that you have annual follow-up. So you do that ultrasound, you do the fine needle aspirate, and if you're told it is benign, every year you go and have the same. You have an ultrasound, checking how that nodule is it growing, and then doing a fine needle aspirate to see whether, because it could convert to cancer. You don't know at what stage. So that's why follow-up and monitoring is very, very important. You listen to what the mother said, that child is still on thyroxine, because the minute you remove the whole thyroid, you need that thyroid hormone for life. So you have to be on permanent thyroxine replacement. And that's very important to make sure that you perform the daily functions. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Sarah, we have a panel of women, and definitely, as Daktari said, that there are more women affected by thyroid disease than there are women. From your experience with the awareness group, do we have men?
Men are there. Because I always say that as long as you have a thyroid gland, you are susceptible to the disease if maybe you have the genetic aspect of it, or maybe your lifestyle is not good. But for men, the challenge is that they go through the same symptoms that women go through, but then there are also other symptoms that they go through reproductive-wise that sometimes make them feel they just don't want to come out. They feel inferior. For instance, for us women, like Daktari mentioned, with the thyroid gland is part of the endocrine system, right? And for us women, our ovaries are part of the endocrine system. For the men, it's the testes, right? And so you see that when they're experiencing thyroid symptoms, the normal thyroid symptoms, for us, when we are able to we are unable to get pregnant or have reproductive hormonal thyroid imbalance, for them it becomes erectile and sexual dysfunction. It affects them in that way, and so it can be, it kind of, I don't know how to put it, it bruises their ego. So sometimes it becomes very difficult for them to want to come out. But if they find a safe space, you know, where I think they can be able to come and talk about these things without feeling judged, and for them to know that it is not them, it is the condition. And like, I was with Dr. on another show one time, and Dr. said something very, very powerful. She said, once you take care of your thyroid gland and the hormonal imbalance, some of these disorders actually resolve themselves with time. The only issue is how long does it take for you to respond well to the medication, if you're seeing the right doctor, and if you have adopted the right lifestyle changes that are needed for you to be able to balance your hormones.
Okay, now for the record, I literally went on a hunt for a guy to add on to this panel, but none were comfortable to come out and speak. Sarah tried the same, and they were all very uncomfortable. And when we come back from this short break, we'll hear from Dr. as to how it manifests in the men, and of course, what you need to look out for as a man. And if you're listening this morning or watching this morning, if you're living with this condition and are willing to speak about it, talk to us, men. Would like to hear what your challenges are. And remember, our question of the day to you is, do you know someone, or are you a thyroid disease survivor, and what are these challenges you faced in seeking treatment? FitSerem says a thyroid function test is expensive. It ranges between 2,500 to 5,000. The drugs are a bit affordable. Doctors should come up with a solution. We hear you, Faith, and we'll talk more about that. John Rono says, money. John, I wish you could tell us what your experience has been. Noble says anti-thyroid drugs, methimazole, and here in Guinness, Sema used to stop thyroid from making hormones, radioactive iodine for making high levels of hormones, beta blockers, helps to control symptoms, surgery in case the three of them fails. Well, this clearly is a survivor. They know what they have gone through and what it entails in treatment and management. Sanayan says, fighting this disease has been a tremendous challenge for me, still is. Thyroid disease awareness is very important. Yes, you can say that again because there are a lot of truths coming out of this conversation. Irene says, may you be healed. My sister was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. I wish I could get information on how to naturally heal it. Well, Dr. will tell us if there are things you can do on a personal level to actually manage the same. Wangwe Mushira says, tuned from Embu, I also have follicular and adenoma, a thyroid disease. Wow. Dr. will also touch on that and tell us what that is. Well, thank you for engaging with us. Let's continue talking about this. That hashtag is new normal. We'll be right back.
Did you know at Ruiru Mabati Factory you can open an account and lipa pole pole at your convenience? Did you know at Ruiru Mabati Factory you can get customized sizes according to your roof plan to avoid wastage? Did you know Ruiru Mabati Factory offers free delivery countrywide within 72 hours? Call us now on 0111 050 700. Ruiru Mabati Factory, Mali Safi kwa bei poa.
Breaking news from Molfix. Let's see what they're developing right now.
Pants is just for me. It really feels very comfy.
Molfix pants with anatomic fit technology. New Molfix pants, an invention from babies for babies.
You should also try Molfix.
Story time. It's story time.
Long time ago, no animals had legs, and only human beings had legs because Maguru had given them.
Everybody sit down.
All the animals were sad and worried.
Sit down quietly.
Bam! The other chickens laughed out loud.
Listen carefully.
Join us every Monday at 8 p.m. with Grace Ekirapa on the Nighttime Tales.
It's story time.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, mbiu ya mgambo imelia na hakika kuna ishu nzito.
#1 source of entertainment news, culture, reviews, what's hot and what's not.
Introducing Kwetu Mix.
This is a very different platform. This is an international platform, you know.
Zifahamu story zote kuwahusu.
The is not single.
Utajua more about top artist lifestyles.
Time ya God ni time ya God. Hallelujah.
What they're up to, we're not in studio or on stage.
That's what I do right now.
That's one. My family is so big.
Hapa tutakuletea updates zote about all the trendy and popular entertainment events kuanzia Kenya, East Africa and Africa. And of course, kuzi count down the top 10 hottest 254 tracks. All your requests pamoja na surprise kibao.
Mambo vipi, kama kawaida, it's your girl Adasa na niko ndani ya Kwetu Mix on NTV.
Join me, your boy Ted Agua, right here on your favorite channel. Tupate vibe.
Your source of all great 411 and so much more.
Japo njia bora zaidi ya kuhakikisha usafi wa mikono ni kutumia maji na sabuni, katika baadhi ya sehemu wameweka mchanganyiko huu maalum wa kutoa uchafu maarufu sanitizer, na tunahimizwa kila tunapotumia tuhakikishe kwamba sehemu zote za mkono zimeupata mchanganyiko huo kwa kufanya hivi kwa takriban sekunde 20 hivi, na tuhimizane wenyewe kwa wenyewe kufanya usafi, manake wapo mwenzako hatafanya usafi basi anakutia wewe hatarini.
Taught us sallallahu alayhi wasallam that we should keep cleanliness. Actually, he said that cleanliness is what is best for a Muslim. And from him, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, hand washing, which is part of cleanliness, hand washing, that we wash our hands, we wash our faces, we wash every time with soap. This is part of what the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam taught us.
Here at NMG, we are working very hard to ensure your favorite publications, Daily Nation, Business Daily, Taifa Leo and the East African are readily available. In a bid to support the efforts to prevent the transmission of COVID-19, NMG has ensured our staff, our distributors and their staff adhere to set guidelines. At our printing plant, all staff are required to wash their hands before entering the factory and must be wearing a mask. All workers either change their clothes on entering the factory or wear an overcoat. We are keeping doors open to avoid our staff touching door handles repeatedly. With our automated printing, contact with the newspaper is kept to a minimum, and at the packing process, the staff observe social distancing. Vehicles used to transport the newspapers are disinfected daily before the newspapers are loaded, and our delivery staff all wear masks and wash their hands regularly. Our vendors ensure that they sanitize every time they handle money and wear their masks at all times. NMG is proud to be able to safely meet your information needs. Stay safe, stay informed with our favorite NMG publications.
Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gachanja. Today, we are learning more about thyroid disease, and Dr. Eva Jenga, who is a consultant physician and also an endocrinologist, is with us in studio. Sarah Katule, who is the founder of the Thyroid Disease Awareness Kenya, and she's also a survivor herself. Naomi Kanoga, who is a thyroid disease survivor, and Ms. Swale Mlalanze, who is a caregiver to a daughter who has thyroid cancer and is on medication to date, but she is actually flourishing a day at a time. Now, Daktari, before we went to break, you saw the feedback that we got, and one of the questions that was posed, if you can have that on screen, is by Irene, who says, my sister was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. I wish I could get more information on how to naturally heal it. Are there natural ways you can actually manage hypothyroidism, or you have to be on medication?
Gladys, I hear what this lady has talked about, requesting for natural ways. The thyroid abnormalities or imbalance, some of them actually are so mild, and depending on what has caused it, and I said, could it be a viral infection, maybe some transient autoimmune disease, and also could also be sometimes stress related. And sometimes some of these hypothyroid disorder or the imbalance may actually be triggered by pregnancy. So when these other outside causes pass and they are solved, the thyroid will be okay, even without maybe requiring a long-term medication. But there are those, and this is why it is important to diagnose what type of hypothyroidism that you have. If it is the Hashimoto's, if it is that one that's caused by that autoimmune process, it's most likely you will require replacement or supplementation with thyroxine hormone, which you are lacking, and give your thyroid a chance to heal. There is no traditional or herbal medicine that I know that will cause a thyroid that is dysfunctional to spring back to function. We do know there are diets that will help. When you have hypothyroidism and it's from iodine deficiency, you will need salt or iodized salt to boost that nutrient. That is giving it's like giving kuni to a fire to burn. So you're giving that the iodine to your thyroid gland to be able to function. So if that was the initial problem, that iodine deficiency, just looking for foods that are rich in iodine or iodide, this will give that substrate to your thyroid gland to function. So that's, I think this is where people need to know. Then we also know that from research or from what has been published is that some foods have things that counter the function of your thyroid, the things called goitrogens that go and block that iodination section or step of the formation of your thyroid hormone. And we found that they are high in raw cabbage, raw broccoli, and those kind of things. And it's good to talk to a nutritionist so that you know which foods are rich in products that will assist in the function of your thyroid. But you cannot pick one and say, go eat this or go and avoid this and your thyroid is fine. And it's, as we said, depending on the diagnosis, what type of hypothyroidism, because not all hypothyroidism are the same. There's that, as I said, it would be the iodine deficiency, would be the autoimmune type. You need to know. Some of the thyroid deficiencies, like in children, are from lack of a thyroid gland. You can be born without a thyroid gland. So that one doesn't matter how many herbal medications you take, there is no thyroid gland that is functioning. And this is why it is good to diagnose it. And a simple thyroxine tablet will put you back into a normal function like anybody else.
Oh, wow. So if there's some children that are born without the gland, shouldn't it be important that this test is done at birth?
That's why it is done in most of the parts of the world. In all the nurseries, children, as they are born, either they take the cord blood or they take blood from the neonate and test for the TSH.
Why don't we do that here?
We are trying very hard, and this is what Sarah is broadcasting everywhere, and also even in the teaching now. I think even the obstetricians, the pediatric endocrinologists are hyping this. So I know it's going to be a routine test in all the maternity wards and the nurseries.
Okay.
Yeah.
And even as we talk about treatment, Sarah, for you, what was the treatment cycle? What are you on?
So after I was diagnosed with thyroid disease, I was put on medication. But I think with everything that I had gone through, especially in losing my friend, I think I went into depression. And of course, again, that's another, chemical imbalance in the brain, as Dr. had mentioned. And so I remember going to visit so many doctors that were not able to detect that. And now I just wanted to mention that even before you go for surgery, your thyroid hormones have to be balanced. You should never ever allow a doctor to touch you if you have not balanced you've not been declared what Dr. calls euthyroid, meaning your hormones are balanced. So for me, that is what I was working towards. But I was never ever able to achieve my euthyroid status. So I was in and out of so many doctors. Finally, when I found the right doctor, I just walked in and he looked at me, did more tests, like Dr. said, looking at the thyroid antibodies in my system, was able to say, oh, you're suffering from Graves' disease, it is an autoimmune condition. And he not only treated the thyroid hormonal imbalance, he also treated my depression. And in balancing those two, I was able to balance my hormones within 3-4 months, something that I'd been trying to do for 7 years. Do you understand? So that's why I'm saying how important it is to see somebody who knows what they're doing, because you shorten the lifespan, okay? You even reduce the expense and you shorten the disease phase, so that you don't have to go through what I went through. Actually, that's why I do what I do, because I realize that when you are given so many things, like you're told so many things, do this, do that, it becomes expensive and it actually becomes depressive. And I remember, I think it was you or Dr. who mentioned about depression being like having anxiety. It is actually part of a thyroid dysfunction. We have people in our platform or in our organization that have been checked into mental hospitals because of hyperactivity. But it's not really because they are mental. It's just simply because their thyroid hormones are too much. They're having anxiety, too much thyroid hormones that sometimes even the people living around them don't understand. So the first thing that they do is push them and force them to go into a mental institution. But they're trying to say, no, I'm not sick. Yeah, and we need them to be heard, and that's what we are saying, like also creating awareness for caregivers or people living around people living with thyroid disease, so that they can be able to understand this disease and understand the people suffering from thyroid disease and able to support them in the right way that is required.
Okay, and for you, Naomi, what treatment plan were you put on?
Before pregnancy, I was on carbimazole and propranolol the first 3 months.
And these are oral medications?
Yes. So after 3 months, propranolol was dropped because now I had already gained weight. I was looking better. So now I could survive on carbimazole. And then now after the 2 losses of pregnancies, I was put on propylthiouracil, the one you said you can't pronounce. So that one is safe during pregnancy, but it's very costly because 1 tablet goes for 57 shillings. And that one I will need, in 1 day, I will need like 4 of them, 4 tablets, depending on my levels. But I started on 6 of them, then they were dropped to 4. And that you would need for the next 9 months until you give birth. And when you start breastfeeding, you continue with the same because it's safe in breastfeeding. So since I didn't breastfeed much, since I dried up, I couldn't even continue with the medication because now the baby is not breastfeeding after that. But it's very costly because now you need 6 tablets a day. You need 6 tablets a day for 9 months.
Wow, that is a huge expense.
It's a huge expense. And not only that, when you're seeing an endocrinologist like the one I was seeing, the consultation, every time I see the endocrinologist, I had to pay 5,000. And when you're pregnant, you know you have to keep following up. So you have an appointment every month or even twice a month. And then there are now other tests apart from the thyroid function test that you do that the endocrinologists want to see. So these tests now were costing around 13,000 to 17,000 a month because
wow,
because they have to keep tabs on your vitamin D, especially vitamin D, because I don't know why thyroid patients cannot absorb vitamin D from the sun. So we have to be on supplements, and the doctor has to keep tabs on your levels. So for me, I was always insufficient on the vitamin D.
So for you, Naomi, did you have insurance to cater for this, or this was out of pocket?
Out of pocket. So the whole medication package was quite expensive, and I'm seeing an endocrinologist, and I'm seeing a gynecologist for the baby. So it was quite costly because now these are 2 different consultations that you're paying depending on who you're seeing, and different hospitals, and then you have to also factor in the when you're going to deliver, the hospital you're going to deliver, you still have a bill to pay. So it becomes quite costly if you're not aware of what you're going to go through. Now, this was the first time I'm going through such a huge bill, because now this is the third child I was getting. So now this was a totally different experience. Then there was also a certain fear that I had, because if you have an untreated thyroid disease, you tend to get babies that are not normal as well, mentally, and some like a Down syndrome kind of child. And I noticed that with the first child I got. That fear was already there before I even conceived, because I had already been told that if you manage to conceive, chances are the child you're going to conceive was going to be abnormal. So I was very fearful, even with the third one, that this would come up. So, but God is great. I got a normal child.
Okay, and we thank God for that. Miss Wale, so your child underwent surgery. They have been diagnosed with cancer of the thyroid. It has metastasized to the lungs. Hii pesa yote nani analipa? We unatoa kwenye mfuko ama angalau NHIF inasaidia?
For the time being, vile umesikia mwenzangu akisema, dawa za thyroid ni expensive, na unaona ni every month ama daily. Mtoto anakunywa daily, lakini baada ya miezi 2 ama mwezi unafaa kufanya hizo test. Hizo test unatoa kwa mfuko. Alafu upande wa kansa, mimi huwa nasaidiwa na watu wa Facebook. Marafiki zangu, well wishers from all over the world, huwa wanaingia wananisupport. Every time nikitaka kwenda hospitali, huwa wanaingia wananisupport. Lakini kama radio Iodine, NHF inalipa mara 1 kwa mwaka, na unaona yeye anafaa kupewa mara 2 kwa mwaka. So hii ya pili inabidi utaingia kwa mfuko utoe. Lakini most of the time nashukuru supporters wangu kwa Facebook, wale uniunga mkono, hao ndio nishikilia. It's very expensive.
Naida, unasema ni mara 2 kwa mwaka. How much is it?
It's around 200,000.
Oh, okay. Na wakati alikuwa alipitia chemo ama radiotherapy?
Ni radio Iodine.
Ndio hiyo.
Na sasa mara 2.
Na sasa hiyo ndio unasema ulitoa kwenye mfuko ama?
Mara ya kwanza nilitoa kwa mfuko, lakini sasa vile niliona siwezi, niliingia Facebook na marafiki zangu wakina Jimia, hao ndio walinisupport kuchangisha hiyo pesa. Huwa mimi nachangisha. Niko na mchanga ndio nafanya kusupport, kwa sababu kansa mtu hawezi peke yake.
It's very costly.
Ukweli, ukweli. Now, Daktari, just listening to the hurdles that the patients and caregivers have to live with, that is so much. First, you don't know what you're dealing with. Then when you find out, there are all these things you have to live with, and then the expense of it. I mean, what more can be done in the system to ensure that we support these patients and caregivers?
Gladys, I'm just feeling sad when I listen to these stories, because our health care in this country is expensive, and some of it's not accessible to people who really need it. And this is why we really need all of us to push for universal health coverage for everybody in this country. No one should be left behind. People with chronic ill health pay the biggest price, because the condition requires that you're on medication for life. It's not like a homa or malaria that you treat for a week and it goes. This is for life. And HIF is putting systems in place so that you have packages that will cover chronic diseases. I happen to be with the Non-Communicable Disease Alliance, where we are advocating for people with chronic illnesses to have a package in the NHIF. Because if NHIF covers dialysis, it covers chemotherapy, why wouldn't it cover these other non-communicable diseases? So I know they are working towards that. Once that happens, it will be actually one of the tools or the vehicles as we get primary health care and universal health coverage. This is the dream for all of us, but we need to push. But it is true, these drugs, the drugs this young girl needs for the cancer, the thyroxine is not expensive, but the cancer, for the cancer itself, and doing the tests, doing that radioactive iodine scan to see whether the cancer is spreading elsewhere, or whether we have achieved the kind of treatment we are doing with the radioiodine therapy, it's quite expensive. And it's not everywhere. It's actually, some of that scan is only accessible in one of the private hospitals in this country. It's not accessible in any public hospital. So these are the things, the challenges we are facing, and we must work towards getting our government to deliver this.
Okay, Daktari, is it because as a country we do not appreciate the impact of thyroid disease? Why is it that we are not prioritizing this condition?
Can I just say that it is not that the country doesn't appreciate. People are not aware, and this is why the foundation like Sarah's, just like when we started with diabetes awareness in Diabetes Foundation Information Center, there were very few people who didn't know what diabetes was up in the country. And when we started creating awareness and we joined with the Ministry of Health, now people even at the dispensary can be tested. So we want to reach that level with thyroid diseases. And I'm sure people will start getting aware. Most people will walk around with a goiter and have no clue whether it is a disease or not. So we need to make sure people get facts. Again, there's also a lot of myths about most of these chronic illnesses. So people need to know the facts, and most of these things are curable. And we need to make sure that public facilities, health facilities, also have laboratory testing capacity to diagnose these conditions. So it is not that I think, to me, I don't think it's because the government is ignoring. I don't think we need now as advocacy groups to make sure that they know.
Okay, and this is the first step of doing so, at least during this year. And I'm told that we have a question to Daktari before we take a short break. On Your World, can we have that on the screen? Christine Bernard says, is recurring tonsils a symptom and rarely adding weight? Daktari.
No, recurring tonsillitis is not a sign of thyroid disease, but gaining weight may be one of the pointers. When you have weight, if you're doing following the right lifestyle habits, eating healthy, exercising, and you can't lose weight, check your hormones. And it's not just the thyroid hormone that will contribute to weight gain. There is the pituitary gland hormones. There's also adrenal hormones. So it's important to have those hormones checked. There's also other things with the ovary that contribute to your inability to lose weight. So let's let's look at the body as a whole. And you know, no one endocrine system works alone. They work all of them together, starting from the pituitary to the thyroid, adrenal, your pancreas, your ovaries, your testes. They all are working together.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there was another question that had been posed to Daktari, or at least a comment about somebody with follicle.
Follicular adenoma. When you have a thyroid nodule, then this is why the investigating a nodule is important. You want to know what kind of a nodule it is. That's what they do, the fine needle aspirate. It tells you now, the cell structure tells you, do you have just a simple colloid goiter, or do you have a follicular adenoma? Do you have other cells like the papillary? Remember the lady, Miss Suarez, said she was told her daughter had a papillary carcinoma of the thyroid. So there are different types of cells. So hers is an adenoma is benign, but a follicular adenoma is always suspicious. And we usually insist, go and have it out, let it be checked, because a needle picks only a few cells. When it is a nodule and an adenoma, get it out and have a full analysis, because that's one that can turn into cancer.
Scanning, I think is the
checking
and checking. Yeah. I think is what is coming out of this conversation. Anything that is out of place or recurrent, just go and get it checked.
Yeah.
And as we take that short break, we had talked about our men and they struggle to come out to even say that they live with this condition. What has been your experience, and how can we encourage them?
We do have men who have thyroid disorders, both hypothyroid, both hyperthyroid, and also even with a euthyroid or a normal functioning goiter. And because they have quite very few, honestly. And I find that once they get to know the information, and then it is true even with the other conditions, once you explain, I feel everybody, you stop now the gender issue and talk about the individual. Every individual absorbs the information differently. And to me, even the male patients, once they get to know, most of them will go for treatment, most of them will do the right thing. When it comes to now that you've tried so hard, Gladys, to get a man on this show,
yeah.
I think men has different health-seeking behavior from women. Just, I don't know whether, when they say men are from one planet and women from another, could it be true?
Yeah.
But I think that's a fact. And I think we just need to, not to give up, but just, it's important for them to come and talk, because it will save a few other men who don't come forward. I can tell you one very peculiar hormone disorder that when men get, it's very scary. It's called the hyperprolactinemia, where the pituitary is producing too much prolactin and you start making milk in your breast. The first time I had a man in my clinic with milk from the breast, you can imagine how scaring that was. And that man would not speak about that to anybody else. So those are sometimes those things need to be handled at individual level, but also to be told that it is normal, it can happen, and it's curable once treated. Because some people can sit on something like that hiding until it becomes a real huge problem, which it takes so long. Thyroid disorders are curable. Hypothyroidism and all what Naomi and Sarah have gone through, you know, you shouldn't even be on those drugs for more than 2 years. You should be able to, 30% will either be cured completely within 2 years on the drugs, and if they don't, then you must go for the alternative. Either have that thyroid removed or go for the radioiodine therapy. Because those drugs, both carbimazole and propiondiuracil, like Naomi has said, have long-lasting side effects that can end up becoming worse than the initial thyroid disorder. So it is important that people know. When you see somebody saying, I've been taking carbimazole for 10 years, you can't understand how, because you shouldn't. 2 years maximum. Then beyond that, seek help so that you know what is the next step.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We take a short break on Your World. When we come back, there's a question here. It has been said that thyroid disease can develop as you age, often after menopause in the case of women. Why? We answer that question right after this break. Stay with us.
Inakuaje mdosi wangu ametupa simu yangu ndani ya maji?
Mdosi wako kwa sawa? Venye Nkirota ameniambia ajui na akimpigia simu ashiki. Hi guy, what the?
For the women who deserve more, Moped is now in Kenya and more than 40 countries. With its nylon-free surface, new Moped has unique softness and up to 100% protection. Your skin will love it.
Siku ya leo tuko na successful bidder na tunamjua sahihi.
Naitwa Steven G. Muita kutoka Ruai.
Ni namba gani ya shiri na unique ulitumia ndio uweze kubidi hii dudu?
1265.
Uko na hiyo pesa?
Iko hapa.
Leta pesa. Hiyo pesa. Sasa nakukabidhi receipt yako. Hiyo. Haya, kifunguo.
Hiyo tumeshikia.
Hiyo. How low can you go? Unaweza enda chini. Mpaka wapi? Bid now.
To achieve great things in life, you must do little things every day, like the 1, 2, 3 with Colgate.
1, wake up. 2, brush up. 3, smile through your day with a fresh breath and strong tea. Smile through your day with a fresh breath and strong tea.
Do the 1, 2, 3 with Colgate and give yourself a future to smell about.
Busco los rastros de huellas debajo de ramas.
I need to know what's going on between you and Graciela.
I didn't say anything about the time you were with Miguel.
Yes, but let me remind you once again that it was because you asked me, so don't you dare throw that on me.
I'm sure that this is the beginning of something really good for the both of us.
The truth is, I could never get you out of my heart, David.
And I am also sure of that. Is it too late now to say sorry?
No.
Along came love.
Beat sensitivity pain fast with Sensodyne Rapid Action for clinically proven relief in 60 seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, mbiu ya mgambo imelia na hakika kuna ishu nzito.
#1 source of entertainment news, culture, reviews, what's hot and what's not.
Introducing Kwetu Mix.
Japo njia bora zaidi ya kuhakikisha usafi wa mikono ni kutumia maji na sabuni, katika baadhi ya sehemu wameweka mchanganyiko huu maalum wa kutoa uchafu maarufu sanitizer, na tunahimizwa kila tunapotumia tuhakikishe kwamba sehemu zote za mkono zimeupata mchanganyiko huo kwa kufanya hivi kwa takriban sekunde 20 hivi, na tuhimizane wenyewe kwa wenyewe kufanya usafi, manake wapo mwenzako hatafanya usafi basi anakutia wewe hatarini.
Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gachanja. Before we get back to our conversation, let's take a look at the other world. Now, two-time Olympic Games medalist Sofia Bekatoru credited with launching a belated #MeTooAwakening in Greece, speaks to media after testifying on her sex abuse case that has encouraged other women to break decades of silence. The 43-year-old mother of two said she was 21 when she was subjected to sexual harassment and abuse by a senior federation member in his hotel room shortly after trials for the 2000 Sydney Olympics. She first spoke to Marie Claire magazine in December before repeating the claim in a state-sponsored teleconference last week. I hope that other women and people who have experienced sex abuse will come forward so that our society will be more healthy and will no longer be afraid, said the two-time Games medalist. Now melding the ornate trappings of medieval faith with 21st century science, Salisbury Cathedral is injecting new hope into thousands of elderly people as Britain mounts its biggest ever vaccination drive. The soaring edifice in southwest England is one of the 3 cathedrals that have turned their cloisters and naves over to the government's program to inoculate the most vulnerable against the COVID-19 coronavirus by mid-February.
The cathedral for 800 years has stood here for 2 reasons. One is to give glory to God. The other is to serve God's people. Right now, this is the most effective way we can do both those things.
It provides atmosphere. I think people come to a building like this and they think it needs to sound as though it's alive, you know. So that's where the idea came from. And we thought, well, we've got a very large instrument here. We don't want to blow people out of their seats, but we do want to give them a feeling of calm and just soothe them a little.
I feel fortunate. I'm sure there's a lot of people that aren't allowed it, but I have it, so I'm quite happy.
It's a good atmosphere, as you said. It is quite calming.
The thought of the disease and what it can do to families and people, to actually come to a building that has seen so much history and is still serving a beautiful purpose for the community. I think it's very special, very special.
Now, dozens of students demonstrate in the northern French city of Lille to demand universities reopen, saying they are responsible enough to respect a strict health protocol. Charles Defies, law student at the university, says university is also a place of exchange of meetings. There are conferences, events, and then there's none of that anymore. At some point, you have to stop taking us for children. We are all adults and we are all responsible enough to respect a strict health protocol that they put in place in the universities that we could respect rather than staying at home. Because people said it was our fault, in the end we are all at home and we can see that the contaminations are still happening. So it means that we are not the problem. We might as well go back to school like high school or college students.
C'est la raison de notre présence ici. Et nous appelons à la formation d'un cortège étudiant. Que le gouvernement
Now, home to flying foxes and a 70-meter stalagmite resembling a dog's bow, San Dong Cave is another worldly wonder that has reshaped the lives of the surrounding community since it opened for boutique tourism in 2013, with only 1,000 visitors allowed annually. Now, Hung Nguyen, a Vietnamese tourist, says, I've traveled to more than 30 countries in the world and each place has a different beauty. This cave is not only the pride of Quang Binh province, but also the pride of Vietnam. There have been few human interventions inside the cave with the only aim to increase the safety for tourists. I think those are enough. We should keep the pristine condition of the cave. Any additional services to Son Doong may affect the pristine condition as well as the charming and natural beauty of this cave. So back to our conversation of the day, understanding thyroid disease and interesting revelations that are coming out of these conversations. And thank you for engaging us on that hashtag New Normal, even as you tell us about your own challenges in seeking treatment for the same. And I'm wondering, for you, Sarah, what are these stigmas around this condition that you have faced or hear a lot about?
Well, stigmatization is definitely one major thing that made me want to start this organization so that the people that are stigmatized can come and find a platform where they're able to talk to one another and understand one another. One of the things that you will hear people tell you is that, especially for thyroid disease patients, is that you're lazy, that you are, sometimes because of the anxiety, you tend to be very, very angry. So you become edgy. There are people who, even in marriages, sometimes you find that relationships are interfered with because of the fact that the spouse is either not understanding the person that is dealing with thyroid disease, and yeah, so sometimes it becomes very difficult to understand someone that is suffering from thyroid disease, and that's why we do this. Even for caregivers, we want them to understand what the thyroid patients are going through. So you're told you're lazy, sometimes you're told you're just trying to be difficult, you know. Sometimes when you go to work, you find that by the time it's 10 o'clock, you're completely worn out. You are, the energy is completely gone, and you're just told. Some people have been fired because of this, actually. So you're left to tend for yourself alone, to buy the medication by yourself. So it's a conversation that really needs to be had to demystify some of these myths.
And as a woman, especially when it comes to the weight gain conversation, what is the stigma around that?
Well, I think even the thyroid patients themselves don't know what is causing the weight gain, especially if you've not been diagnosed with thyroid disease. So for me, I haven't come across, most of the people that I've come across really are just okay with themselves. But then there are others who are, sometimes you're told, oh, you're too fat, or you're lazy because you don't want to walk around, you don't want to work out, and your work is just to sit down and you don't want to do anything, you don't want to be involved in anything. So yeah, that's sometimes very, very difficult.
Okay, and for you, Naomi, I mean, you went through quite an episode and it took a toll on you. And while you're going through this, for those that did not understand what you were facing, what did they say?
I was very misunderstood by people who are close to me. And at some point, I remember I went through a very tough depression because at the time I was losing these 2 pregnancies. At the same time, I lost my father. So in a span of 7 months, I had lost 2 pregnancies and a father in between. And I just went into depression because I was mourning and I could not come out of it. I think I was so overwhelmed by grief that it took almost 2 years to come out of it. And it's because of the difficulty of the disease. And at some point, I would not even open the curtains. I would just stay in, sleep. I don't want to interact with people. I would just stay indoors. It was that bad. I could not even interact with my own immediate family. So it was really bad, and it gets worse when you don't even have a pillar to lean on. The support you're looking for does not even understand you. So it really took a toll on me until my environment was changed. Now I went into a positive environment, and now I could start recovering. And that's when I was even able to carry the 3rd pregnancy to term. And even after that, the depression that comes with motherhood, especially if you're a new mom, and on top of that, you add the thyroid is still bothering you. So it becomes tougher than normal women who are going through it. Your depression becomes tougher if you do not have a proper support system. For me, my proper support system was my mom, because now I can't say she understood what I was going through, but she never judged me. Because at some point, as you heard, we have muscle aches, we have bone pains. You can't really understand what we go through, but we have pains we also don't understand where they come from. And some of this is because of that vitamin D I was talking about, because if you're not able to absorb it, you basically need the sun for your bone development and your bone nourishment and your joints and all that. So if you can't even get that naturally, it bothers you.
Yeah.
And when you're already a mother and you have all these pains and you can't even hold your own baby for a long time, it takes a toll on you, because now every time the baby cries, you think of lifting that baby. It's like a task, you know, and you want to do it very fast. You pacify the baby very fast, and you want to lay the baby down. You don't want to, you really want to bond with your child, but not in your arms, because even that strength is not there.
Wow.
So it has been a hassle for someone like me who's going through that. So I've not met, or rather I've not discussed with other mothers what they've gone through during that period, but that's my experience.
Okay.
It was quite tough now after the baby has come, but since I was already in a positive environment, I was able to come out well in the end, because right now I'm in a better position by far.
Okay, and we thank God for that. And now that you put up your story out there, many will resonate and perhaps come out and seek for the help that they need. And Daktari, just listening to the two ladies, the stigma of this is enormous, and especially that comes with the disease. But of course, there's also the mental effect. Talk about the mental health effect on this one.
Both Gladys, you know, this mental health in this country is now gaining momentum, and I'm so happy to see that even the ministry did set up last, I think 2019, they set up a committee to get that mental health addressed and that committee met with many stakeholders. One is because for the longest time, if you are told you had issues with the mental health, people looked at you differently. You are either crazy, there's something wrong with you, and nobody thought about this is a condition you have no control over and needs treatment. And yet, mental health, some of the disorders that you have, the depression, the psychosis, can be explained by this thyroid hormone. And you will not know unless you get the proper attention. And the minute it is diagnosed properly, it's treatable. You treat the thyroid disease, you balance your hormones, the depression goes, the psychosis, the anxiety, the irritability, all that go. And yet, they tend to be passed over. Somebody will say, oh, Gladys has become so irritable, she's so edgy, she's touchy, she's shouting at everybody. And people have actually been fired, like Sarah said. I've seen marriages break because the husband, in one case, the husband said, this is not my wife. But you go through the process and explain to them, and he says, all I want is my wife back. And once you treat and she's back to normal, you see he appreciates, but he needed first to understand. So again, simple things. Let's all understand what the thyroid disorders cause. How do you get to that mental health stage? Again, mental health in this country, I know there's a lot of awareness even through the media now. The ministry is doing a lot of awareness. The civil society, we have we have Dementia for Women, we have other mental health groups, people living with the mental health issues that are going around and making creating awareness. And these are the groups that we are supporting in the even NCD Alliance. The minute you get to know that these are treatable conditions, and people stop blaming you, because even sometimes then people withdraw and blame themselves for a condition they have no control and they didn't contribute to its origin. So I think these facts we need to talk to people about and tell them it is curable, it's treatable, it's controllable. Those that are not curable, you control it with medication.
Are we saying that you work closely with a psychiatrist?
Oh yes, oh yes. In fact, most of I found that even in the private institutions, most of the psychiatrists and mental health specialists will call us first to rule out hormone disorders before they say this is a purely a psychiatric issue, pure without any other factors or trigger. And you find that a good number of endocrine problems will trigger a mental issue. Yeah, mental health issue.
Okay, now even as we wind up this conversation, I hear there's a question for Daktari. If we can have it on screen. David Morogo says, how serious is septic thyroid?
Yeah.
Daktari.
Yeah, septic, that's meaning an infection in the thyroid. I have seen it in quite a number of patients that have reduced immunity. I've had a few patients coming with thyroid abscess who had HIV, immune compromised. So it is serious because it's like any sepsis anywhere in the body. It is serious and needs to be addressed. Simple in that if it's an abscess, you drain it, you give antibiotics. If it's just an infection, an inflammation, which is bacterial, give antibiotics and it goes away.
What would cause a septic thyroid?
Bacterial infection. You know, just like you have any infection anywhere, even that thyroid can actually get an infection. Yeah.
Okay, another question here, with the one we went to break with, and the question was, it has been said that thyroid disease can be or can develop as you age, often after menopause in women. Why?
Remember I told you earlier, there is no endocrine gland or system that works alone. The reproductive hormones are also controlled or coordinated by the pituitary gland. So when you are getting into menopause, there are so many other hormones that from the pituitary and hypothalamus, those are the two glands that coordinate our other endocrine function. We have now follicle-stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone that go up and give you the menopause symptoms. And some of the menopause symptoms actually mimic the thyroid symptoms. Some of the thyroid symptoms mimic menopause symptoms. So there's a crossover. And so it's at that point you find that where the thyroid stimulating hormone is controlled or is I would say controlled by the pituitary gland, it's also the same place that you also have menopause hormones being controlled. So that crisscrossing, you find that at menopause, I told you there are some areas that some things that can trigger thyroid imbalance. Pregnancy is one thing because of the hormones that come with pregnancy that can cause an imbalance of the thyroid hormone and it's in passing. But you find that in menopause, women who come in menopause, I always check their thyroid because you might find that it is a bit, but borderline. And if you have already a thyroid disorder, your menopause can tend to be more exaggerated. So these are the way they interplay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another one for Daktari. If you have diabetes, are you at a higher risk of developing thyroid disease?
Again, diabetes is also an endocrine disorder. That's from the insulin. But we also find that if you have thyroid disorder, your diabetes control is also affected. It's a challenge. But for diabetes to be the one to cause thyroid, unless it's an autoimmune and the same autoimmune antibodies that are hitting your pancreas are hitting the thyroid, diabetes on its own is not a cause of the thyroid disease.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's hear from the ladies, even as we come to an end of this conversation. Ms. Wale Mlalanze, I'll start with you. You have been a caregiver and you're very vocal about your journey with your daughter. Ungetaka kuambia wazazi wengine vipi kuhusu huu ugonjwa na vile ambavyo kutembea na daktari wako?
Okay. Ningependa kuambia wazazi wakiona watoto wako na shida kama ya kukula, hawana appetite, usiku wana sweat, na kohoa na nini ingine. Yani symptoms zenye zinaenda kukaa kama homa na si homa. Ikirudia mara 2 mara 3, huyo mtoto afadhali uende umpime thyroid yake uangalie function yake. Because sometimes hata unakuwa mistaken, unaambiwa mtoto aende apimwe HIV. Kwa sababu huwa wanakonda kabisa, kala pia wana change skin tone, wanakuwa weusi. So mtu akiona mtoto anaendelea kukata kukula ama na reduce weight sana, amuangalie thyroid.
Aha.
Juu wengi huwa angalie thyroid.
Okay. Na kuna wale ambao wameshindwa kabisa, especially wakati wa kupeleka mtoto hospitali sababu ya hela. Ungetaka kuambia government nini jamini?
Ni wengi sana, wakati niliko hospitali nimeona wengi sana wanateseka juu ya hela. Hata watu wazima kama hao wanaume unasikia wanakataa kuja kwa TV ni kwa sababu wengine hawana hela, na wazazi wengine pia huwa hawana hela, wana give up haraka. Usi give up kwa sababu sometimes Mungu anatuma watu kando na kando wakusaidie, lakini government ingeweka facilities za kupima hizi TSH na T4, T3 zikwe bure, alafu wa produce pia hizi dawa za thyroxine at least zikwe bure. Juu wengine wanasema si expensive, hiyo tembe moja 25 bob, lakini kwa siku wazazi wengine hata hiyo pesa hawezi pata.
Ukweli. Asante sana Miss Wale kujiunga nasi. Naomi, what is your parting shot on this conversation?
Mine will be get tested early, and for someone like me who has already conceived and given birth, get your child tested as well. I also got my son tested because we didn't know his status, and I was fearful that he might have gotten it from me, but thank God he's fine, and it should be something that we do often. It's not something you just relax about it. Maybe do it twice a year, because it could be something that would recur. You never know. So one time, maybe in the beginning of the year, do a test. At the end of the year, do a test. You never know. But it's good to get tested. Okay. Get tested, know your status.
Thank you, Naomi. And briefly, Sarah?
Well, Naomi read my mind. I just want to tell those that are suffering with thyroid disease that, first of all, you're not alone. There is an organization, there's a group, there's a platform where you can come and join other people that are suffering with thyroid disease, from kids to men to women to people of reproductive age, and you can be a part of a movement and a network that is going to be able to spearhead some of these, like what Ms. Swale has talked about, kids being tested. We are really pushing to see how we can have kids tested immediately that they are born. But for now, if you have a child, you've just given birth, please get your child tested. If you're looking to get pregnant, you're in your reproductive age, get tested. If you're pregnant, get tested. Once you know this disease, once you arrest it early, it's very easy to manage thyroid disease.
Very well said. And of course, Daktari, you're here representing the health practitioners. Your challenge to them?
Picking the condition early is very key. And I'll just echo what my ladies have said. From neonates, because we know, I remember Naomi saying that you can give birth to an abnormal baby when your thyroid is delayed. When you have hypothyroidism, and you might give birth to a child that is hypothyroid. And if you don't correct that within the first few months, that child can have the developmental challenges. And yet, it is totally incurable. The thyroxine hormone, or the thyroid hormone, is responsible for development, not just physical, but even the mental, the brain development. So that needs to be picked early and corrected. We are not just doing the screening at birth for the heck of it. It's pick those ones and prevent cretinism. Cretinism is that condition that you get for a child being born with a dysfunctional or non-functional thyroid. And it is it can be prevented and treated within the first few months of life. But the other thing about the cost and the availability and accessibility, this we all have to play a part. You as Gladys in the media, we need to make sure we create awareness, and also involve other stakeholders and our policymakers that these non-communicable diseases, thyroid being one of them, should be given attention and be made affordable. If we were able to get free medication to HIV patients in this country, testing was free, I think even this can be addressed.
Amen
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, ladies. Dr. Eva Njenga, consultant physician and endocrinologist. Sarah Katule, founder, Thyroid Disease Awareness Kenya. Naomi Kanoga, thyroid disease survivor. And of course, Miss Wale Mlalanzi, who is a caregiver. Thank you for joining us on this conversation and helping us create awareness on the same. I have learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone watching this morning has a thing or two they can take home. And of course, the right questions now can be posed to the right specialists. And for the support, there now is Thyroid Disease Awareness Kenya, who you can walk with even as we live with this condition. Well, that's it for us here at Your World this morning. Tomorrow we'll be back the same time, and tomorrow we shall be focusing on marriages, thriving marriages. Well, I have heard over and over again that marriage needs to be included in the list of 1,000 ways to die. Now, the question is, how come there's some people who have found a way to make their marriage work? We find out tomorrow. See you then.
Presenting the new Haptic bathroom cleaner. Compared to ordinary detergents, its thick formulation gives you superior cleaning and kills 99.9% of germs and viruses all around the bathroom. Blue for the toilet and red for the bathroom.
These are very unique times we find ourselves in as a nation. We have never been in this on this road before. But we believe that it provides us with a great opportunity as Kenyans, as a people, especially as a religious community, to help everybody look up to God. The things that are happening are not unusual and are not